From the heart of Central Florida, you are listening to the most electrifying show in media. I'm Neighbor's Choice. And I'm your host, David Gornoski. Glad to be with you once again here live for our special broadcast we do every Thursday. And that's Science and You. We do a science portion of the show each Thursday. We've been doing it for some time with great feedback from you folks around the country and around Florida. If you're listening to us on News Radio WFLA Orlando, happy to have you. As always, you know Dr. Yu and his work as a physicist and his exciting clarity that he brings to scientific news, which is always a fun place to go for positive news in a time where our news cycle is dominated by division. So joining me now is our Chief Science Advisor, Dr. Yu. How you doing?
Hi, David. Thank you for having me on. I'm doing great.
Great to have you on again. So I wanted to get into some of the news stories related to science issues and try to make sense of it for our folks who are listening at home. We have a story here. Growing anomalies at the Large Hadron Collider raises hope. Recent measurements of particles called B mesons deviate from predictions. Alone, each oddity looks like a fluke, but their collective drift is more suggestive, according to quantamagazine.org.
Yes, it's interesting. So all the physicists, try to looking for some kind of new physics, looking for some anomalies which was not predicted or contradicted to the prediction of a standard model of physics. So this is another episode. And from the observation of the past measurement over past on the decades. The reason of this observation comes from because we observed a particular subatomic particle called a B meson. So you can forget the name. Basically, it's two quarks, the quark and anti-quark particles. So that's a subatomic particle made by quark and one anti-quark. So this kind of particle. So what we observed during the collide of the hydrogen atom or something, protons during the collide, we observe this called quark and anti-quark particle called the meson, and behave differently after collision and during their decay. So what we really see is normally when we see a quark and anti-quark, this pair decay, they always decay to the opposite, to the different. So when this is quark has three different generation of particles, meaning one is heavier than another one. So when this quark pair, heavy quark pair, decayed to a lighter pair, so normally we would see, the charge, the quark charge would decay to the opposite charge, a lighter opposite charge one. So that's the way we normally see. But in this time we see it's odd. So when we have, say, this bottom quark, so that's a negative charge particle, quark. That's heaviest one. When they decay to a lighter one, they call the strange, the lighter version of a quark. So say strange particle, and we find out, strange particle has the same charge as the heavier version of this called bottom quark. So the rule of thumb is when heavier one decayed to the lighter one, this changes the charge, decayed to opposite charge. So this is a strange phenomenon. However, the physics do allow have exceptions. Okay, in this case, we did observe some exceptions that we consider as a random. So the exception based on the rate, we say normally it's about a one, when you flip 100, it's about 66 times you get this phenomenon. Normally you will get 50% of the time. But in this observation, we find this switch without switching to the charge happens more frequently. So it's 66% of the time. So by individual event, you will see this is random. However, based on the collective data, observe thousands of data, they find out the odd seems like beyond this called insignificant, it becomes significant. So what they imply is, so it could have another called a new particle. So that's the conclusion. They said, oh, maybe there is a new hypothetical force carrying particle. Okay, so this particle can explain the missing matter called the dark matter. Okay, or there's another theory that they predict there is another particle called a legendary or called a fabled particle called a lepton quark. So that means this new particle can turn a quark into a lepton, basically into a quark into an electron, and vice versa, can turn electron to a quark. So that's another type of theory, even though it's not popular. But so basically they have two different theories to explain this phenomenon. But at this moment, I just want our audience to understand, to know that, see how self-contradicting of the basic quantum standard model, quantum physics. If you think about it, electron and the quark we consider as an elementary particle. The reason we call it elementary particle because they do not have an interior structure and you cannot subdivide it. But this theory, these two phenomena tell you can turn quark, that's a quark into an electron, lepton, into an electron. And also you can turn electron into a quark. So they are not fundamental anymore. They are not elementary anymore. Somehow they're interrelated. So that's something I see. That's another reason to point out the contradiction of this and the confusion of the standard model. And in my understanding, based on my own research, I believe the standard model is fundamentally a flawed theory, and all the so-called particles, the quarks and the protons, quarks, protons, or electrons, or neutrons, whatever, they all made by a single universal particle. I call it, basically, it's a magnetic particle. They all have a positive and negative. The only difference is the weight. So that means the quark may be a combination of a multiple of electrons made by so-called electron is a magnetic particle. So basically, quark is made a lot of electrons, and the electron is made by let's say single magnetic particle. Then quark were made by lots of magnetic particles. So that's the relationship. So the so-called quark turn electron. So you do not change charge because every single particle is already have a positive and a negative charge. This depends on how they move, or you can say how they spin. So then they react differently. So this is once again, turns out that there are no new particles discovered in this case. And but it does point to the problem with current standard model.
So in your view, has the Large Hadron Collider been a good investment for scientific discovery?
Not really. Of course, you can always have some surprise when you spend billions. So it is 16 billion initially, and then each billion, initial investment is 16 billion of euros, okay? And then maintenance every year, spend $1 billion. So how many? It's over $20 billion, Oh, okay. It's a way, it approaches so that much money spent. So what did they really discover so far? As far as I can remember, that's the most significant. They call the God particle. The so-called God particle, Higgs boson, right? And I do not believe that's even a true discovery. I do not believe Higgs boson is some kind of a new particle, new development. That it all point to one thing. In my prediction, no matter how many experiments you do with the Large Hadron Collider to do it, you always get a charge, or you get a particle, just a smaller piece. It's all a magnetic particle. It's a size differently. You do not get anything new. If you think about it, every single particle are made by a magnetic particle. So the fundamental particle is just a size different. And the behavior, they always have a dipole, north and south.
So do any of these
I do not believe that investment is good.
Do any of these magnetic particles in your model have different, attributes like all the different subatomic particles in the standard model of the atom?
Yes. You can combine them. So you can say two magnetic particles can form a neutral particle if a positive and negative neutralized, right? And also different number of particles and different structure. So you may see outer layer more positive, but the interior, is negative. If you play negative, you will find different structure will give you a different appearance. Say, oh yeah, this will appear to be more positive, and the other one appears to more negative. Depends on the structure and the number of the basic particles.
We're speaking with Dr. Yu on our Science and You segment of A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gornoski, your host. We'll continue with Dr. Yu. When we continue, we'll look at the latest in the world of nuclear fusion. Popular Mechanics has a new story we'll look at in just a moment when we continue live on A Neighbor's Choice.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It can be devastating. There is a law firm in Tampa Bay that will keep you informed throughout the entire process. That law firm is Catania & Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania & Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims do not even realize that they can claim compensation for their loss until they talk to Catania & Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to CataniaCatania.com, award-winning over 28 years and family first. Catania & Catania, personal injury, auto accident, and motorcycle accident attorneys.
Monitoring spoke. Hey, it's Bubba the Love Sponge. With all the coronavirus stuff going on, you've heard the CDC say wash your hands about 1 zillion times. Studies show that the average person touches their face 23 times an hour. Your nose, eyes, and mouth, that's called the T-zone. And the T-zone is the most important area to keep clean. And for over 12 years, there's this product called TheraWorks Protect. It's been used by millions of emergency room patients and medical clinics to support infection prevention. TheraWorks Protect is easy to use, and it's safe to apply several times a day on your hands and around your nose and eyes and mouth, better known again as the T-zone. Just apply a small amount into your hand and rub it in until it dries, and then apply another amount and rub it all over your T-zone. Finding hand sanitizer sometimes can be difficult, and now you can order TheraWorks Protect online. Just get it directly from them. Go to TZoneProtect.com and use the Bubba Kicker. When you use the Bubba /, you're going to get 20% off and free freight, and you're going to have it in a few days. Again, TZoneProtect.com /Bubba. Start protecting yourself and the ones that you love now.
The one thing that we have learned from a pandemic is that if we are healthy, we are less likely to be susceptible to grave sickness. With that said, stem cell activation is a big part of keeping ourselves healthy. By activating your own stem cells, you experience energy, sleep, reduction in pain, and a support system that promotes faster healing from wounds. LifeWave B radio patches are an easy, cost, affordable way to activate stem cells. Clinical studies demonstrate that LifeWave patches reset the genes in the body to a younger and healthier state. By wearing the daily patch, your body will activate stem cells to benefit a healthier and productive life. Go to lifeway.com/B radio to see how you can elevate, activate, and regenerate your life with stem cell therapy. There is a special offer with B Radio. The address again is lifewave.com/B radio. The address again is lifewave.com/B radio. Live healthier and wiser with the LifeWave B radio patches at lifewave.com/B radio.
Science and You returns. It's our Thursday edition of our program here on A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gornoski, your host, here with my friend, physicist Dr. Yu, where we tackle all kinds of issues in the world of science and medicine and nutrition from a physics perspective as the underlying frame of trying to unify these different fields of information into a more cohesive and understandable pattern. And so Dr. Yu has been a great champion that every human being has the ability to understand physics, even at a young age. Isn't that right, Dr. Yu?
Yes, of course.
A lot of people think that you have to have a lot of equations to be the beginning point of understanding complex physics, like nuclear energy and nuclear physics, right?
Yes, you mentioned about the equation. Physics to me, or I believe to everyone in the world, is the first thing you experience in your life. When you're born, and you sense sound, you sense heat, you sense light, and you see things as all physical phenomena. So what I try to say is this should be a very, very intuitive to everybody if the physics theory is correct. How unfortunately, whenever you ask people about the physics, they feel like a so remote, some high horse that they can never reach by normal human being. I believe there's something fundamental wrong with our theory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's an obsession with the math, but the math becomes a hall of mirrors where you're always working on the math, but you're not checking to see if it makes sense in the actual physical world where physics should be, right?
Yes. The reason they use math, actually, this is like a mask. They're hiding behind something they don't really understand. So that's why they said, oh yeah, only if you understand what these symbols of mathematical symbols, then you can talk about it. So this is basically a smoking mirror. Basically say we don't really understand, so that's why we use some symbols and even a simple letters that means so many things nobody even can explain what that means. So that's actually exposes how deficient. About a human being, understand the real world. So you're talking about the big boy fusion reactors?
Yeah, well, the thing is the lesson that I learned is that there's so many things that we could solve if we would stop clouding our physics conversation with so much conversation about equations that don't relate to the real world. And that leads us to the story you were referencing in Popular Mechanics. The big boy fusion reactor takes a big boy step. The largest tokamak, which is a nuclear fusion technology, is the world's 1,200-ton base, is 10 years in the making, and the engineers, the article says, have installed the first and largest piece of the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor fusion project in France. The gigantic assembly begins with this piece, the steel base, which weighs more than 1,200 tons. It's been in the works for 30 years. The experimental tokamak fusion reactor which is a fusion plasma reactor where extremely hot charged plasma spins and generates virtually limitless energy, is one of a handful of extremely costly miniature suns around the world, the article says. Is Popular Mechanics right? Is this the way we're going to create virtually limitless energy?
No, not to me. So if you read carefully, so what they really say is, so this project called the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor Fusion Project has started over 30 years ago, okay? But until this year, I believe the first piece to assemble in France, only March of this year. That just starting assemble our first piece, okay? And this piece, of course, took 10 years, and initially started made in India. That's the major piece called a cryostat. So this is basically is a super cooling chamber. So they wanted to use this chamber to contain hot plasma. Okay, so this is just the first piece to start assembling. And so when this will be operate, it says it will be switched on in 2025, 5 years down the road. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
Anytime we are mentioning about the fusion technology, we always say there will be in 5 years. But even more. So what happens in 5 years? It will switch on, and what they do, they said that we're going to heat up the temperature enough to induce nuclear fusion, which means hotter than the center of the sun. The center of the sun is 27 million degrees, but this hotter could reach 100 million degrees. Okay. Other than that, it says finally, once we switch on, it said that will take years to do the experiment. Okay, will take years in the same particle. After 5 years, they started switch on to testing. Will take years. So I wanted to say why this won't work. Because all the efforts and all the money, I believe they spend billions of dollars already. And on what? On a technology to contain almost 100 million degrees heat inside of a container. We know, based on our knowledge, no container can contain such heat. Whenever the heat reaches to container, it's only melting in a couple thousand degrees. How can you contain 100 million degrees? So what they do, they try to use a super magnet and they try to keep the flame, keep the heat away from the wall. So that's all the money they spend on to try to create a high temperature chamber and without touching the wall. So that's all the money spent now. But even though they made this one, I still do not believe, fusion reaction will occur controllably, because I believe this is headed in the wrong direction.
Dr. Yu, always a pleasure to hear from you, and it's always to hear your clarity. It's always great to hear your clarity as we unpack some of the fake news in science and their obsession with equations that don't reach to reality. Thanks again. We'll continue live on A Neighbor's Choice and look forward to next Thursday with another edition of Science and You.
Special report, protests across America. Mourners in Minneapolis came to memorialize the black man whose in-custody death sparked national protests on racial injustice. The Reverend Al Sharpton said George Floyd should not be among the deceased.
He did not die of common health conditions. He died of a common American criminal justice malfunction.
Protesters turned out and crossed New York City's Brooklyn Bridge at this hour following an outdoor memorial service for Floyd there, as correspondent Athena Jones tells us.
There are thousands of people who came out for that protest. Many of them joined the march across the bridge, a peaceful protest. Frequently we heard them chanting peaceful protest along with no justice, no peace, and Black Lives Matter.
Memorials for Floyd are planned in North Carolina and Houston in the coming days. I'm Barbara Cusack.
Hey, I'm Andy. If you don't know me, it's probably because I'm not famous. But I did start a men's grooming company called Harry's. The idea for Harry's came out of a frustrating experience I had buying razor blades. Most brands were overpriced, over-designed, and out of touch. At Harry's, our approach is simple. Here's our secret. We make sharp, durable blades and sell them at honest prices for as low as $2 each. We care about quality so much that we do some crazy things, like buy a world-class German blade factory. Obsessing over every detail means we're confident in offering a 100% quality guarantee. Millions of guys have already made the switch to Harry's, so thank you if you're one of them. And if you're not, we hope you give us a try with this special offer. Get a Harry starter set with a 5-blade razor, weighted handle, shave gel, and a travel cover, all for just $3 plus free shipping. Just go to harrys.com and enter 6655 at checkout. That's harrys.com, code 6655. Enjoy.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. David Gornoski is your host here, and I have our friend Ryan McMaken, who's the senior editor of Mises.org. He joins us live now from Colorado. How you doing, Ryan?
Hi, David. I'm great.
Yeah, long time no talk. It feels like it's been like 20 seasons of the show called America since we last talked. Huh?
Seriously.
And it's great to hear from you again. I hope you're doing well over there in Colorado. Quickly to start off, have you seen a lot of viciousness or rioting or looting in your area in Colorado?
No, in my city things are fairly under control. I don't know, what are we on, like day 7 or something like that. Now, the first few days downtown, of course, it was all limited to just downtown, the Capitol Hill and that surrounding area, where I worked for many years. Unfortunately, I don't have to go down there much at the moment. But, so for a few nights in a row, there's some dumpster fires, graffiti, some broken windows, things like that. Nothing that I would describe as chaos. But by, Monday, then they were actual just protests as opposed to riots and looting and that sort of thing. And I was downtown on Sunday, and it just wasn't that big a deal. Not that I think that, there weren't lawbreakers and all of that, but I do get annoyed when I see headlines from other places or in other countries basically listing my city on the list of places that are on the brink of collapse. And it's just kind of the whole thing, this and the whole disease thing is kind of highlighted for me. You just can't really believe anything you read in a lot of these news media outlets.
Yeah, it really has put a microscope on the sausage making of fake news. You know, when you see media outlets either ramping up and trying to stoke the feeling that there's vicious riots in a community where they're not really, or in other situations in which there's a desire to create fake news and say that, it's a peaceful protest as there's a building on fire in the background on CNN and so forth, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to tell whether their agenda is to understate the bad things that are happening or to overstate them. And it's the same thing with the disease. Colorado supposedly was a hot spot for the disease, and I myself, and I can't find anyone else who knows a single person here who was hospitalized with COVID-19. I do know a couple of people who've had it. My wife's aunt had it in Kentucky. She was very, very ill but survived, was not hospitalized, though. And then I know one of our writers, actually, at Mises.org, who was living in an assisted living community and was elderly. He actually died, and that was attributed to COVID-19 at least. Of course, he was an elderly man. Yeah, I mean, I'm living in a hot spot. Can't seem to come up with anybody who's even been hospitalized. So that kind of gives you a sense of what kind of the level of hysteria that you've been told to feel. And I'm not even one of those people who thinks the disease is a hoax or anything like that. But I just also have some sense of context, and I can do basic math.
Right. Well, let's get into the top story that people have been talking about today, which is that General Mattis, he's come out saying that Donald Trump is a threat to the Constitution and all this stuff. And the media, of course, this is like catnip for them. They love it. They're such a fair, free press. They just love these stories. I find it disingenuous, Ryan, because it's like, Mattis, if I understand, he parted ways with the Trump administration because he want to be more aggressive in regime change in Syria or something? What was the story with him? It's certainly not a saint in the terms of nonviolence and protection of innocent people.
Yeah, well, these generals, I mean, I always take a grain of salt with whatever these guys are saying. They've all got their own political agenda. They all hang out together. They've all got their own thing going, and they all live a very comfortable and easy life off the sweat of the taxpayer. So anytime one of these generals is coming out and saying what presidents should be doing, of course the civilian government is who should be making the decisions, I'm always a little bit suspicious. Of course, generals, I did an article a few weeks ago on the technocracy, how the U.S. has moved more and more in the direction of handing over the country to unelected bureaucrats and quote-unquote experts and technocrats, and the generals are very much in that category. They're in the category with the Anthony Faucis of the world, with Federal Reserve economists, people who are basically unaccountable and sit back and make and tell the civilian government what they should be doing. And yeah, so Mattis has his own thing going on. Of course, in this case, though, I happen to agree with the issue in terms of no, Trump should not be sending out troops to occupy American cities.
Yeah, you have an article you just published yesterday on Mises.org called "Mr. Trump Don't Deploy the Military to American Cities Without Their Consent."
Right. Now, of course, I don't, that doesn't imply that I think everything's fine as long as a state or a city asks the president to deploy troops there. The larger point is a very important moral and constitutional one. For 400 years or more, Anglo-Saxon law, that is, this heritage that's handed down to us for many centuries in terms of things like trial by jury, things like right to a speedy trial, things like having locally controlled militias instead of a king-controlled military are all important things. And these things are predate the American Revolution, but then were codified in the Bill of Rights and in the Declaration of Independence and those sorts of things. And to have then a president that sends in troops to parts of America that object to that, where the local authorities don't want that, this is absolutely contrary to what the Declaration of Independence says. It's contrary to what the Constitution says. It's contrary to centuries of careful fighting on behalf of pro-liberty parties who tried to prevent a situation where a faraway ruler can send in his directly controlled military to your part of the country in order to do what he wants. And so, while yes, it's clearly illegal and unconstitutional if we have any respect for the original text, but it's much more than that. It goes back to before the revolution. It goes back to the revolutionaries themselves who fought against precisely that sort of thing.
Well, what about the idea that, the argument that if these different local, state, and city governments, because they're so obsessed with political correctness and virtue signaling, they want to do a light touch where they don't have any policing, protecting vulnerable store owners and business owners from being scapegoated and viciously attacked as an innocent scapegoat during these looting seasons or looting frenzies, I guess. What's your take on that, though? The idea of if the local and city is not going to do anything to protect private property owners, is there any recourse they can seek?
Well, I wonder, what the definition of doing nothing is and which cities wherein that applies. Certainly in my own city, the police weren't doing nothing, even though, of course, some people nevertheless were victimized by vandals and, to a limited extent, some looters. And, of course, cities and states, they violate people's rights every single day. They have ineffective government. They have abusive government. They have regulations that shouldn't exist. They have police officers who harass law-abiding people. I mean, goodness sake, we saw this every single day during these lockdowns where the police were just out there shutting down businesses, taking away people's business licenses, harassing moms on playgrounds, that sort of thing. Was that justification then to have the federal government send in people to correct all that? How would that have ended? Right. I don't think that's a good idea. There's a reason that people who are in favor of freedom are usually opposed. I'm not sure why suddenly they flushed a lot of that down the toilet just because there's some riots in some places, but the proper principle is that if you're having a problem with your state and local government, you go to them and you criticize them and you take action against them to correct the situation. You don't go crawling to the president in the hope that he'll come and solve all your problems for you. Of course, a 19th century American would have regarded that as just laughable and silly, the idea of an American going to the president and asking them to come and solve their local problems for them.
But Ryan, don't you know the same living Constitution that allows someone like Mattis to go into undeclared wars of regime change and elective reasons and still call himself a defender of the Constitution against President Trump? That living, breathing Constitution allows you to just do what you want as you go, right?
Well, that's true. I mean, the Constitution says whatever the courts say it says, or whatever generals and presidents and CDC bureaucrats can get away with, which is, of course, why I don't really take the Constitution says argument very often, unless it's unless the Constitution just illustrates a larger moral principle. I mean, you shouldn't do something because it is or is not constitutional. You should do something if it's right or wrong. Sometimes the Constitution lists the things that are right and helps us fight against things that are wrong. Sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it's just so totally ignored that it's become irrelevant. I mean, like the 10th Amendment is basically irrelevant now, and no one pays any attention to that. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a living document. It's not enough to limit anybody in any way, and I have no doubt that if the president just decided to start sending troops wherever to do whatever he wanted, that he'd be able to get away with it for a while. Sure, there'd be lawsuits and things like that, but it's really more a matter of governments do what the people let them get away with. And, yeah, the fact that there's some stuff written down on parchment somewhere, that can be a helpful list of principles, but that's all it is.
You know, in ancient times when there was a pandemic, there was always the fear of civil unrest and not only contagious germs, which could lead to contagious deaths, but also contagious violent activities on the part of crowds that are in a state of unrest. I think we're seeing that right now in our headlines, in our reality, in our different cities. And it's interesting to me, Ryan, how they foment all this pent-up energy. They shut down the movie theaters are going to go bankrupt permanently, they're saying, and you still can't go to church in some places. And if you do, it's really kind of a truncation of what it's supposed to be at best. And you can't go to school, you can't go to these different things. And then all these people just have this boiling anger that's just lit. It's like a tinder of different dry leaves, and you just light a match, you know?
Yeah, it's amazing the level of naivete that these pro-lockdown people had, where they thought that you could create a situation with minimum 30 million unemployed people, where you could remove the churches from society. Oh, no big deal. What do you need churches for? They serve no social function. We'll just get rid of them. No more meeting places for people to come together and meet family and friends, as if these are all just extras that nobody needs, and that these have no function in society of what we would colloquially will say like letting off steam or something. But the fact is, every sociologist knows, every historian who's approached this issue, and I look at that a little bit in the article, knows that these institutions like churches, coffee houses, community centers, all those organizations, places for families to meet and relatives to come together, and even places of employment where people have a way to interact with their community, to maybe have some of their more violent impulses tamped down a little bit. People who are paying attention, who have studied the issue, know these are very important institutions. You can't just get rid of them. But based on social media, there are apparently a lot of losers out there who think that the only thing that they couldn't do during the shutdown was go drink at a bar or something. I mean, I imagine having a life so empty that the only thing that you did without during this was drinking at a bar. For most people, these what are called third places, someplace other than work and home, are extremely important in maintaining a functioning, healthy society. And the lockdown people just want to get rid of that. Of course, most of the lockdown people were fairly wealthy, well-off, white-collar people who could work from home and had lots of broadband, so they communicate with other people. Maybe had a big house, a nice backyard, and like maybe a second home somewhere they could escape to. So they weren't affected as much, and they weren't living on the edge of criminality maybe, like a lot of lower-income people are, where they need these institutions to keep them functioning on, focused on legal things. But you know, we just chucked all that out the window, and apparently we're now surprised that there's been some violence that has come directly in the wake of that sort of thing.
We're speaking with Ryan McMaken, who's the senior editor of Mises.org. We'll continue to get his thoughts on the unfolding situation with the rioting and protests and what it all means when we continue live on A Neighbor's Choice.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It can be devastating. There is a law firm in Tampa Bay that will keep you informed throughout the entire process. That law firm is Catania & Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania & Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims do not even realize that they can claim compensation for their loss until they talk to Catania & Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to CataniaCatania.com, award-winning over 28 years and family first. Catania & Catania, personal injury, auto accident, and motorcycle accident attorneys.
Let's face it, these are stressful times. New routines, the constant bombardment of bad news, and trying to keep you and your family safe all the time. It's Frank for Center for Men's Health. During these stressful times, your mood is so critical, and nothing's more important to a guy's mood than testosterone. The single greatest issue for guys with low T is mood, and the single greatest change for men that get low T care is a greatly improved mood. Many are grumpy when they start, and most can't believe how much their mood improves once they get treated. And everything improves once your mood improves. Feel the difference C4MH.com can make in your life. I've been a patient of C4MH.com for a couple of years, and recently I've lost 20 pounds because now I have the energy to work out from home. And that'll put you in a good mood too. C4MH.com's express treatment plan is convenient, affordable, and above all, safe. And with locations all up and down West Florida, there's one near you right now. Find out more. Go to C4MH.com.
Man, how can you afford gas for that big SUV? I pay less for gas than everyone else. I got the free Get Upside Gas app and get up to 25 cents a gallon cash back every time I buy gas.
Hold on. You're getting up to 25 cents off a gallon with the free Get Upside Gas app while I'm paying full price?
You know it. People earned over $1 million last year. You just got to take a picture of your gas receipt and bam, up to 25 cents a gallon cash back.
You don't have to tell me twice. I'm downloading the free Get Upside Gas app now.
Download the free Get Upside app now in the App Store or Google Play to save up to 25 cents a gallon when you buy gas. Use promo code TRUCK for a 20-cent a gallon bonus on your first tank. That's up to 45 cents a gallon on your next tank. Just download the free Get Upside app at the App Store or Google Play and use promo code TRUCK. Save money on gas on every fill-up. Download the free Get Upside app and use promo code TRUCK. That's TRUCK.
David Gornoski here. Hope you're doing well this Thursday evening. And I'm here with Ryan McMaken, who's the senior editor for Mises.org, which is a place you can go to learn about a peaceful, nonviolent way of handling the economy where you're not initiating aggression, you're not, baking in vengeance into law. You're having law that's based in skin in the game, law that's based in the idea that you got to have a victim if you want to make people have a crime that they're going to have to enforce. You got to have a victim on the police report. That's a good place to start if you want to have real law, real justice. Ryan, I wanted to ask you, I just saw this tweet someone sent me about some random person on Twitter, I guess, trying to justify the behaviors of some of the looting that we've seen across the country in the protest against the death of George Floyd, however that's connected. But it says, I guess trying to make sense of it, under capitalism, where capital is the primary medium through which social relations take place, the only way to lash out against that system can only ever be through looting. So when conservatives say to do anything but loot, they're saying not to do anything at all.
Okay, that's an interesting point. First of all, I'm not sure that it's the primary means of human beings interacting. I mean, every day your family interactions are non-market interactions. Spend a fair amount of time doing that, and so I would oppose even just that basic premise there that market transactions are overwhelmingly what people are dealing with. But on top of that, anyway, I guess the idea there is that stealing is the only way to show you don't like the status quo. That seems odd. It's an odd point of view. I mean, I guess if you're just completely amoral, then it's okay to take some 60-year-old who has a small little mom and shop place and steal from him until he's destitute. And boy, that'll show those rich bankers what's what. I mean, and of course that's largely who's being destroyed here. A lot of the times it's people who own a little bar, people who own some little shop, and that stuff's getting smashed up. A lot of the time it's immigrants. I mean, how ridiculous is that, right? When my grandparents came here from Mexico, they had a liquor store in East LA. And can you imagine if they just had that smashed up? That not only would that have, of course, impoverished my grandparents, it would have impoverished my mother and her siblings, and had all sorts of repercussions throughout the community, as well as the church they went to and supported charities there. And then, of course, just the way that shop served the community was it was in California, a liquor store sells lots of things other than liquor, right? Just like soft drinks and sandwiches and snacks and little things like that. They can have little grocery components, especially back then. And so you're some other kid who lives in the community, and you go and you get some snacks and you interact with Ma, Pa, Galindo, who have that store there. And suddenly one day that's all burned out. It's all gone. And where are you supposed to go to interact with the community, to earn a living? Because of course they had employees. And where's that family supposed to get their income? I mean, it's a despicable point of view that it's okay then to just destroy these people's lives in order to show some politician who lives in a gated community somewhere that you're mad at him.
Yeah, it seems to me that some of the leftist elements that have used this protest movement to escalate their attack against markets, they have a real problem with the idea of economic calculation itself, the idea that things can be weighed and measured and there can be prices and that there can be calculation and understanding, you know, goods and services and that there should be a voluntary exchange of who we can hire and how we can, you know, set up our businesses and stuff. They just seem to hate the whole thing. And some of them use nihilistic arguments, which you don't really have much of not much to say about that. It's just madness. But then there's some that try to wrap this into a Christian ethic that somehow, you know, we have to renounce our economic calculation. I mean, any thoughts on that as the editor of a website that's all about economics?
Well, of course, as a Christian myself, I fail to see why stealing is somehow justified, which is usually what their arguments against economic freedom come down to. That we need the state to redistribute everything. Of course, who runs the state? Usually someone with values that are not supportive of Christianity. And so they're going to step in and do it all for the good of the downtrodden, which has happened approximately never. And so, of course, those arguments are usually just nonsense. If you want people to support the poor, you should convince them to do so voluntarily. And I absolutely think we should have more of that. I think that every church should have attached to it, like a health clinic and a school and some daycare and all those services that people end up going to the government's welfare state for. Those things should all be provided free of charge for the destitute by Christian groups. Unfortunately, they're not, because a lot of Christians don't take their religion very seriously, or it's just politics to them. It's about who you vote for or something like that. But the fact of the matter is this isn't about like markets and incentives and efficiency and things like that. This is just about not stealing people's stuff. It's about leaving people alone. It's about appreciating that the market is really just a bunch of people doing what they want to do freely without someone having a gun to their head. And that's just really all it comes down to. And obviously the looting ethic is the opposite of that. It's about violence.
And domination, yeah. Ryan McMaken, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Always great insights from you, and I want people to check out your work at Mises.org, where they can learn more about the things you're doing, the things that you and Jeff Dice and some of the other great people, Tho Bishop, are doing at Mises Institute. Mises.org is the website. Thanks again, Ryan.
Thanks, David.
A Neighbor's Choice is in the books for today, but you can always look forward to tomorrow. Go to our website, aneighborschoice.com. If you've missed an episode, tomorrow I'll be interviewing Angela Yee of the hit show, The Breakfast Club. So we'll continue to have some fascinating discussions. I'm David Gornoski. Godspeed.